So really great question. I wanted to give a thorough answer that it deserves. Question was, is this ABCD valid in snow? Pointing below its term, pointing below at a level, weekly S1, and the 20-day exponential moving average nicely confluent there at the ABCD term. So the answer is yes, enthusiastically. It's valid both in terms of drawing and in application. In other words, it's a totally validly drawn ABCD with a clear and coherent AB leg, price impulse 1 or price wave 1, and then a corrective BC leg, which rotates into the breadth of the AB leg, but with less impulse and ferocity and obviously length than the AB leg. And then the CD leg that you're positing is from the top of the corrective leg down. It's just a copied length, so it's exactly the same, and it points right at WS120 EMA. So 100% valid ABCD and 100% valid application. In other words, we always talk about path and destination. So we do believe that we don't know what the market is going to do, but the way we attempt to snuggle up to knowing, to get some sense, to have really, really high probability, asymmetric risk and reward ways of navigating the market that we don't know what it's going to do, is by path and destination. So destination would be levels, that's what we mean by that. So we can just kind of clearly identify WR1, QR3, clusters of probability, QR2 and MR1, weekly pivot point and trend guide reversal, weekly S1 and 20 EMA. These are the bus stops, and the bus is price, and the path is how the bus gets to the different stops. Unlike a bus, which always goes from stop A to B to C, the market usually almost always does go from stop to stop, but we have really kind of no access or very little access to what order that's going to happen in. I would say no access. I mean, that's the whole reason of mapping this sort of thing. Drawing that ABCD is an attempt to say, okay, instead of going here from this destination, quarterly R2, MR1, back to the highs, we may just go down to here. Totally valid path and destination. The ABCD in this case is an attempt to organize information about path, and the levels, which are pre-drawn and kind of are what they are an attempt to organize information about destinations. Here's the really important thing. The footnote to this is that you have to take responsibility and be really precise about what specifically you are doing here. And what I mean by that is this. You are essentially forecasting or mapping a move with that ABCD that is very validly drawn and very validly applied to match with a level. But that level is 70 points lower from the top of the BC leg, from the top of the AB for the CD leg. And given the ADR, which let's just say 5-day ADR is 50 points, and we've already done 30 points of it, it's very unlikely that we'll get to weekly S1 today. It's borderline wildly unlikely. It's fairly unlikely, but totally possible that we would get there tomorrow. We need to start losing it now, tack on 20 points of range below the lows, and then have a weak day tomorrow. And then this ABCD needs to happen tomorrow as well, because tomorrow is Friday, and we won't have that WS1 on Monday. Alternatively, if we go 3 days just sideways, this 20 EMA is going to rise and rise and rise up to and including getting darn near weekly pivot point, depending on how long it takes. So the reason all that's important is in mapping this ABCD, you are reaching very, very far forward in both price and time. Even though this mapping is very, very valid, there's absolutely no issue or footnote to the application or the validity of the drawing. There is, however, a very, not challenging, but a very constructive feedback or footnote to this exercise in its whole, because you are reaching forward at least 2 days unless there's news. You're reaching forward 2 days, potentially 4 days, and you're reaching forward 70 points in price. So does that mean that this won't happen? No. Does that mean that don't look at this, focus on something else? Nope, not at all. It's about taking responsibility, because remember this tenet that we talk about. The signal resonance for a given premium signal is quite high. We have asymmetric risk and reward on many signals, and we get wonderful responses from levels, even the ones that don't ultimately work for some lasting reversal. As we go forward in time from a signal, two things happen that are related to one another. One is the number of counter signals that you're going to get on the way as your move plays out goes up, and with that, the unknowability or the uncertainty of the future goes up. Because each one of these counter signals that you have, in order for this ABCD in SNO to play out, you have to hold through a long signal that's just as good as the short you took, and then a reshort signal that's just as good as the short you took, and then a long signal that's just as good as the short you took. So you're not really trading the system anymore, because the system told you to get in here and chunk and chunk and chunk and chunk, and that's okay. Participant A, Tim, or whoever said, for some reason, participant Tim likes this more, so I'm going to put the system on hold and I'm going to trade it a different way. Totally fine. But what's not fine is you can't not take responsibility for that for yourself, because each one of these counter signals means the uncertainty and unknowability of the market is ticking up and up. So what I mean by that specifically is in SNO, in order for this very, very valid path and destination map that you've mapped out to play out, you're going to have to hold through a retest of QR2, MR1. You're going to have to hold through a retest of WPP trend guide reversal. Let's say it bounces at WP trend guide reversal and bounces back to the level from below. You're going to have to hold through that. Not hard to hold through that as you're short, but it's still another signal. Then you're going to have to hold through another test of weekly pivot point trend guide reversal. With each one of these, the signal resonance of your original ABCD mapping is deteriorating. It's going away. It was wonderful in the moment, and it's still valid. It's a valid mapping. But the likelihood that that comes to pass as the new information comes out of the market is growing lower and lower. And so eventually, just depending on how we get there in time, you're maybe holding through a new signal here, like tomorrow's fresh weekly S1, and then ultimately you will arrive at that, and it's very valid, and you saw it in advance. But what you had to do necessarily on the way was take responsibility for all that sort of non-system trading and for just ignoring all of the new signals from the market that generated the same signal that you took on the short side. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. What I am saying is that you need to realize that that's what you're doing. It's the same with indices today. We get this massive long signal at the lows with almost everything at a key level at around the open or 9:45 Eastern. RTY main prep zone, trend guide reversal, swing anchored VU up, NQ, supply and demand, trend guide reversal, weekly S1, 20-day, ES, supply and demand, trend guide reversal, Apple level, VIX level, MDY level, SMH level, Google level, massive signal. Did we get a response? Massive response. This could be an outside day, huge response. That is not true. This could not be an outside day. But this is going to be a big green bar on the daily chart, right? So that signal worked. Now, can I map this ABCD all the way up to there? That's not so insane. That could happen intraday. Or what if I'm short and I held to this signal and I see RTY come up in this key level and I'm playing for this ABCD, ABCD. I'm playing for this much larger move down into a key level. Is that ABCD drawn correctly? Yes, I'm very precise about the way my ABCDs are drawn. I've been doing it for many years and I was taught by the best. Is it applied correctly? In other words, does it point to a key level? Yes, you'd be insane not to see it. ABCD into the key level. Is it valid? Yes, but I'm going to have to take responsibility for that to play out through holding through this comp setup in all the indices, through holding through a retest of that key level. And maybe that's it, or maybe there's another signal on the way, whatever it is. So I'm going to have to ignore signals that are just as good as the RTY short I took here, AR2WR1. Does that mean that couldn't happen? Hell no. Could happen absolutely. But I need to be very specific. If I map that ABCD, that's not going to come easy. I'm reaching forward through unknowable time and a great span of price to map that. Totally valid, but just be cognizant of the sacrifice you're making in terms of signal resonance and certainty to play for something like that, because by definition, you have to hold through at least twice as many signals as the one that generated the trade that you're already in.